I'm really excited to share with you our work on the Machine-Actionable Data Management Plan pilot project. Today we have Matthew Harp from ASU. We've actually got a recording of him. Cynthia Hudson-Vitale, Kat Kozar from currently Cal State Fresno, was previously at UC Riverside, which is what she'll be talking about, and Jamie Wittenberg from the University of Colorado Boulder. And I did want to give a quick shout out to some other team leads who weren't able to be here today. We have Becky Grady from the California Digital Library, as well as John Shidaki, also California Digital Library, Judy Ruttenberg, who I thought I saw, but oh, there she is. Hi, Judy, from ARL. And then Claire Dean, who is our consultant and project manager on the work. So today we're going to start with a project overview with Cynthia. Then we'll go into three case studies, ASU Boulder and UC Riverside. We'll do a quick wrap up and questions. If you want to learn more about our project, we have a project webpage. There's the bit.ly and the QR code if you want that information. So then I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia to give you an overview.
Wonderful. Thank you. And good morning, folks. So glad you could join us. So I'm excited to share today's update and kind of kick things off a little bit more and provide some additional context. So today we're going to be talking about a project we've been working on over the last year or so, year and a half, called Machine-Actionable DMPs pilot, or we also refer to it as the MAP project. And it's a collaboration between the California Digital Library and the Association of Research Libraries. And it's been supported by the National Science Foundation, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And this collaboration really builds upon previous work between ARL and CDL that dates back to 2019 when we worked together on some machine-actionable data management plans and persistent identifier work. So this project is rooted kind of around a key idea that data management plans, or DMPs, could be more than just a static compliance-driven document. They can become dynamic machine-actionable tools that actively support research workflows, automate reporting, and improve coordination across libraries. Across libraries, research offices, and IT. You know, as research data management has kind of shifted, or we're kind of seeing the shift away from compliance-driven models and more in towards, supporting good scientific practice and good research integrity, institutions increasingly asked, how can we make data stewardship more strategic, scalable, and responsive to researcher needs? And the MAP project really explored that from a number of different angles. We focused on how machine-actionable DMPs, automation, and AI could help institutions kind of coordinate more effectively across campus for a variety of research compliance needs. So, working with a group of pilot institutions, we designed the pilot to test for 4 specific use cases that are on the board right now. First, we wanted to explore whether or not we could showcase the potential of machine-actionable DMPs, demonstrating how they could shift, again, from these static plans that we know researchers really don't look at too frequently, into living dynamic research management tools. We were also curious and wanted to test how we might track connecting DMPs, capturing links between like an original plan, data sets, publications, and other research products. And third, we were curious to investigate the role of libraries in research data governance, kind of on a broader scale, even kind of beyond research data management and sharing into areas of research security, storage, and others. And really looking at and trying to understand how libraries could expand upon their leadership in this evolving landscape. And fourth, we were really curious to explore how machine-actionable DMPs could demonstrate value to the research community. So showing how stewardship and coordination could strengthen research outcomes and institutional strategy. So Overall, our goal for the MAT pilot was to test machine-actionable features and functionality in real-world institutional settings. So we focused on two main activities across the pilot period. The first is piloting, again, the integration of prototypes and workflows, testing how MADMP tools could interact with research administration, repositories, and other compliance measuring or resource measuring tools that exist on academic campuses. And two, we wanted to test out implementing new standards and functionality within the DMP tool for machine actionability, advancing, technical approaches that can kind of scale across different types of institutions. And our active pilot phase ran from January to December a year. And this kind of gave enough time for our pilot partners to adapt workflows, integrate systems, and share lessons learned. So I just wanted to give a quick acknowledgement to all of the participating institutions and project leads. We were fortunate to work with a very strong and diverse cohort of institutions. The IMLS-funded cohort included Arizona State, Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine, Penn State, the University of California Riverside, and the University of Colorado Boulder. And we also collaborated with an extended cohort that participated in the project, but kind of on a little bit of a lesser scale. And we can share that if you have questions about that in the Q&A. What? Oh yeah, Erin's here too. And she was part of the extended cohort. Thank you. Each team, as part of this pilot project, outlined a small project that kind of met one or more of the use cases listed above. And you will hear shortly from a group of folks kind of presenting their case studies about the pilot projects and what they learned. I'm going to track across the entire cohort. The institutional pilots had a number of approaches, including AI-assisted DMP evaluation, dynamic data stewardship workflows, and real-time institutional coordination. And all of this, like what we've really learned is it offers valuable insights into how libraries, research offices, and IT can really build more strategic and a scalable research ecosystem across an institution. So with that, we're going to kick it off with just a brief recording from ASU. They weren't able to join us. This is 6 minutes, so please bear with us. And they are going to be talking about their amazing AI tool.
Hi, I'm Matthew Harp, Research Data Initiatives Librarian at the ASU Library, and I'm going to talk to you about our contributions to this project. ASU's contribution to the MAP pilot was the prototyping of a DMP feedback tool using generative AI that would provide nearly immediate feedback to requesters. And we wanted to demonstrate the feasibility of an AI power enhancement for DMSPs leveraging enterprise and free AI models to provide an open source code base with launchable examples and documentation on implementation and expansion options. I want to acknowledge too that as part of this project, we really were centered around the DMP tool. So we had that in mind when we were starting this project, but we also wanted to make sure that we were in fact not limiting ourselves to this. So this tool should be able to work within the DMP tool or without it. Therefore, on the left side of the slide, you'll see there is a full text box. One could enter the entire text of a data management plan into it, or if a data management plan has a DMP ID, they could put that in there and test it. And the reason we wanted to do that, even with those published IDs, is to see if the API through the DMP tool would actually work with this agent. And it was successful. A little bit of background. The Research Data Management Office and the ASU Library have a long-term formal partnership. We recognize the need for a scalable solution that could provide consistent DMP feedback. Over the years, despite our outreach, there is a general lack of awareness for our support capabilities. So data management plans, while funded, may not be actionable. Some challenges included the fact that both the library and the data management office use separate customer management systems. We needed to remediate responses to requesters in a more effective way. A few weeks into the project, we ruled out that ERA system because it's just not an established development platform, and experimenting with critical systems for grant proposals and setting up false expectations we felt was just far too risky for us. We considered what kinds of crosswalk integrations were available for notifications, including the DMP tool, ORCID IDs, And even the downstream data sharing services like our research data repository or other providers that typically do not get notified until an end of a project. Our goal was to enhance the process and not work against it or create confusion for end users. The review assistant uses Google's Gemini AI model and compares submitted plans against the DART rubric and support documentation related to services at ASU. It does not train or compare submissions against other DMPs. Human feedback is still essential, so we had to have a mechanism for email notifications to both the requester and the service provider. The DART rubric, a 2015 project to standardize the review of data management plans, serves as the framing device. The DART score sheet provides a structured but basic breakdown of each section. This prevents bad information from being reused, and it's not about judging the DMSPs for scoring purposes, but identifying them with a given section by utilizing the DMP tool template structures where a service provider has been identified or left off. We also utilize the 2023 FASB DataWorks update, which combines the Belmont Forum and DART, adding additional and more current elements to the scoring. This review gauges whether the author answered a specific question against the expectations laid out by the rubric, not whether the information matched a funded or unfunded plan. So going into the project, establishing trust was an essential component, and we are utilizing our licensing agreements with our AI vendors that protect user information from being used in public AI models. We also found that not only was the outputs far more consistent, but the feedback indeed was reliable. Now, this slide represents the overall working environment at ASU. The idea is that there are multiple layers involved in our tool that lead to a novice user being able to utilize the tool developed by our own community, so others can actually build upon this project, adapt it, integrate it. We have a basic architecture for the agent. On the right is the client or user interface, where the DMP is entered to the agent working against the rubrics, rules, and funder templates processed by the AI DMP topics and DMP review bots. The final product is then sent back to the client interface. The same interactions can happen via the DMP tool API when a user uses the DMP tool ID. And this diagram demonstrates the user-centered information, how it is processed through the APIs, and the reports returning back to the end user. Now, initial tests performed in July of 2024 provided basic information, but by the fall, with the introduction of additional rules and templates, had evolved into a much more useful feedback, which is broken into respective sections that are more readable and reflective of the type of information the rubrics were designed to provide. And throughout the process, our sense of context, transparency, and human interaction was key. We want to ensure that researchers know what is happening when they click that request feedback button in whatever system they are using, and that there is always an opt-out option. If they do choose the more immediate AI-driven response, they will receive a message noting that this is an auto-generated AI response that may not be accurate. Every request will be sent to our team for review and a possible follow-up for either corrections, additional advice, and also a heads up that respective support providers may be reaching out to the researchers. So when we're thinking about where is this going to go and what are our next steps, this was just a prototype. Again, we weren't looking at this to be something that was going to be deployed right away. So again, we're going to look to expand this pilot out further and actually do some real world user testing on the expanded pilot. And I want to give a shout out to our collaborators on this project. It did take a team to do this: Jim Taylor, Catherine Claypool, Nathan Rollins, Justin Fern, and Deb McCaffrey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Wittenberg. I'm the Assistant Dean for Research and Innovation Strategies at CU Boulder. Before I talk about our pilot, I just want to take a moment to thank Andrew Johnson's team at our Center for Research Data and Digital Scholarship, our folks in library and campus IT, and our campus partners, including the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics, LASP. They did all of the work on this project. I'm just representing it. And in particular, I want to thank our data librarian, Matthew Murray, whose slides I'm using right now.
Our goal for this pilot project, so we really wanted to lean into this pilot project as an opportunity to automate alerts for our CRDDS personnel. That's our Data Services and Scholarly Communication group in the libraries. When institutional resources like repositories or computing infrastructure are mentioned in awarded data management and sharing plans. We wanted to track research outputs and data deposits to meet public access requirements. and we wanted to streamline and centralize information about published data sets related to awarded DMSPs for reuse across campus resources. Another key focus for us was incentivizing researchers to deposit their data sets into our repositories. Ours is called CU Scholar. We wanted to integrate that DMSP content into other campus services. Like we have a faculty activity database, we have institutional repositories, we have an expert system that's developed in-house. And we're hoping that these efforts will enhance interoperability writ large across systems and streamline our workflows for researchers and administrators. This is a complicated slide. So these are our current system connections at CU Boulder. When you see that solid black line, that's representing a complete connection. We also have dotted red and black lines representing partial connections or future connections. You can see that there are many partial connections between systems. Maybe this is familiar to you at your institution. And for us, these gaps really hinder our ability to fully integrate research information systems. So addressing these partial connections is a really critical step forward for us in achieving a truly machine-actionable workflow. Here's a look at the connections we were focusing on building or wanted to build as part of this pilot project. So these included enhanced integration between LASP's infrastructure and campus systems like CU Scholar. We're keeping an eye on developments in open metadata standards and persistent identifiers as well, which we're really hoping will accelerate the pace of progress in creating these seamless connections across our systems. If you were at the talk on open metadata yesterday afternoon or the talk just this morning at 9 a.m. on Comet, these are the kinds of advancements that we're watching when we're thinking about enrichment across these platforms. Okay, so I want to narrow in a little bit on our Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics at CU Boulder. LASP was originally founded as the Upper Air Laboratory in 1948, and it's our oldest research institute. It's also the only academic research institute globally that sent scientific instruments to every planet in our solar system, the sun, and a lot of moons. And since 2013, they've received over $1 billion in research revenue. So this is a really sophisticated and complex institute. And it's also one of the reasons that we wanted to use them as a case study. NASA is our biggest funder at CU Boulder, and it's also LASP's funder. And that this complex case of this lab offers a lot of opportunity to explore what's possible when it comes to automating data management planning. So we're really fortunate that the LASP team was an enthusiastic partner. Because you can probably imagine the complexity of their systems, and I'll touch on that right here. So LASP has their own sophisticated systems and data repository, the Interactive Solar IR Radiance Data Center, Lizard. You can see here that this data portal provides access to a variety of data sources via its web service interface. And it also has a software library that uses a mathematical technique to describe and manipulate data sets, functioning as a data set catalog, essentially, and access service. Additionally, they have a metadata repository that feeds into their access service. So LASP had their own set of goals for this pilot and reasons for working with us. They really wanted to integrate metadata from the DMP tool into Lizard using APIs, while also updating the DMP tool metadata via those APIs, so reciprocally. This integration would streamline metadata connections across CU Boulder systems. And I want to focus here on some of the challenges we identified as we explored LASP's data management and sharing plans. One major challenge, and possibly our biggest challenge in this project at the outset, was actually getting the DMPs. We wanted to get them from our Office of Contracts and Grants, but we found that we were required, they required us to request them directly from principal investigators. This was an initial obstacle for us. If we had a comprehensive pre-award access, this might have looked a little bit different. It would require a different answer from OCG. And post-award access is even more complicated. A lot of this was impacted by sensitive projects like those funded by some government or military agencies, that require additional security clearance and make this process even more complex. So as a result, we were relying on a small number of test cases for this pilot. Another challenge we had was dealing with versioning inconsistencies in DMSPs. Published plans often differ from the final versions that are submitted with grant proposals due to either edits or abandoned submissions or people using the tool as a template and then taking their content elsewhere. Researchers, we noticed, rarely updated their plans post-proposal stage, which made it really difficult for us to determine whether a grant was approved or to identify related works tied to the original plan. And these issues really complicated efforts to create machine-actionable workflows for us. Finally, our third challenge was in tracking research outputs. I think this is a familiar challenge for many of the people in this room. This is especially true for data sets, and connecting them back to grants remains a significant gap, not only in our infrastructure at CU Boulder, but in our infrastructure as a scholarly community. Unlike journal articles that I want to say often, but maybe sometimes acknowledge funding sources, data sets rarely reference the associated grants or awards, and locating non-article outputs like data sets is particularly challenging compared to articles. So this lack of connection makes it hard to automate workflows and would require manual intervention to verify relationships between data sets, grants, and plans. So what can we do about these challenges? So here are some solutions that we're exploring at CU Boulder as a result of this pilot. Namely, collaboration is really key here. Researchers, librarians, repository managers, and policy experts really need to work together on improving metadata quality to adhere to FAIR principles. This is a key priority for us, and we're, like I said, paying close attention to some of the changes in infrastructure and industry in this area. Also advocating for institutional support, because we really need that buy-in from the content producers and from the other offices at the university to help streamline and automate these systems. Like I said, some of the challenges that we encountered were business rule challenges rather than technical challenges. And prioritizing security measures, this is really key for us. Addressing those sensitive project requirements is essential. So through the pilot project, we've really improved collaboration across campus units, and we've laid the groundwork, I think, for future advancements in this area as the technology and those integrations continue to develop and evolve over time. I'm going to pass it to Kat now to talk about UCR. Thank you.
Thank you. My notes are printed. So, hi, I'm Kat Kozier. I am an ag librarian at California State University, Fresno right now, but a year ago, I was the data librarian at UCR. And I do want to thank both UCR and Fresno State, as well as the whole project, for allowing me to continue on with the project at UCR and heading it up, because I really think it's a really cool project. Like, I was really gung-ho on it, and so I'm going to talk about it. It focused on two areas. The first was investigating the space of how DMPs support providing and gathering metadata required to deploy computational resources for research projects. So we're talking the active research aspect of a DMP. And we wanted to create a pipeline between DMPs and the research workflow using the DMP as a source of truth. The second area we worked on was to help track research outputs and to create automatic notifications to campus stakeholders. The UCR team represented three divisions: the Office of Research and Economic Development, the College of Engineering, and the library. We had some challenges midway through the project as I took the new position at Fresno State, but again, I was able to stay on and help coordinate the project. On this slide, we're connecting the project goals with our implementation and outcomes, and the outcome is a proof of concept application that integrates with the DMP tool API to pull in DMP information and and it also provides a portal to deploy virtual machines using Google Cloud Platform. The app also provides a notification and tracking system for various approvals, with the initial investigation on sensitive data, meaning that we were investigating how exactly to track those approvals. Here we see some screenshots of the app. It pulls information from the Machine-Actionable DMP. We focused on that concept as opposed to specifically the DMP tool API. It's just the API for the DMP tool is what was able to allow us to test the concept, but theoretically we should be able to integrate with any tool that actually has machine-actionable DMPs. And so the information that it pulls includes the overview of the project, funding sources, and other information gathered specifically by the DMP tool, such as research outputs, because it has a really cool integration with the rest of the research ecosystem. What this does is it reduces the burden on PIs. So there is now one place for them to view many things associated with their project. A challenge that we had at implementation is that we were only able to read DMPs at that time and had not yet been able to connect to writing to DMPs, but I believe that it's the goal to incorporate documenting final metadata as appropriate in the next iteration of the app, meaning that we'd be able to, once we're able to be able to write out to the machine-actionable DMP on the DMP tool. This shows the deploying of computational resources. Our original idea was to deploy these resources based on scripts used to deploy on-prem campus server resources, but we pivoted to using GCP since the campus ITS was already working on a method for tracking and approval of GCP instances. The benefit of this is that it's able to keep track of detailed metadata, which is often required for replicability of research. We had early conversations on bitwise reproducibility, but quickly decided to focus on the larger concept of just deploying resources and how automated they could be. The protection level for the DMPs, it can be fairly automated based on DMP information, but there's other aspects, especially of GCP, that require manual selection at this point. And there is a benefit to this manual selection and not having it completely automated, because it will allow the campus IT to review requests for provisioning and make sure that we're not being overcharged. This slide demonstrates the tracking and commenting system. We tested out various prompts for Google's Gemini LLM to gather detailed information, which I'm going to cover in the next slide. Unfortunately, the DMPs generally lacked specificity to provide granular enough information to deploy resources. But what it does is it centralizes tracking and comments so that the prompts and the responses can be documented. All right. So this is a good enough Gemini prompt that our IT specialist Victor created with a lot of iteration of testing it out on how to minimize like the interactions with the LLM, because often you're charged on a per question basis, right? So we're trying to get as much as possible within the one thing. And then this is the results of the first prompt, the first time that we tried it. So this was in 2024. And this is verbatim how Gemini actually put it out, which is important to note because I tested it recently. We're gonna see that. But it was fairly good in terms of estimating, like the VM instance type, where it's like we actually don't have enough information on this, right? It had a lot of that information. I personally think that the storage is a little under, but also based on because we included a JSON of the DMP, that actually didn't have enough information to actually determine how much storage is actually needed. And then persistence, and then on the next one, it talks about the security, required in terms of intellectual property. Also, I thought that it did a really good job. It tells like next steps, who to contact. There's not enough information. Here's some information that we really need to know, right? And our next steps at UCR really, or the next data library, and this is what I'm going to recommend to them, is to really work with the PIs to make their DMPs a little better, right? I mean, one of the big, I can't remember if I comment on this, but I've said it multiple times, that PIs often see DMPs as a burden because they don't see the value in them, right? And that's one of the things we really focused on. What's the value add? How can we add enough information that then they see it as something that helps them instead of is just there in a checkbox? So this was, again, last year. And then this one I want to say last week. And this is what it spit out verbatim. A little harder to read, which also means that if we wanted to integrate it into a computational and machine actionable process, that needs a little more work on the back end, right? So I annotated it to go ahead and see how it compares between the two. When I shared it with Victor, he and I came up with the same idea the same evaluation that it sounds smarter, as in quote unquote, it thinks it's smarter, but it actually lacks more details needed to implement the computational resources. And you can see again, so all it did is it parroted back the type of CPU that we asked. We're like, can it be like this? And it's like, yeah, we're just going to use that, as opposed to evaluating what's needed there, or telling us that we need more information in order to make a true evaluation and suggestion. Storage, it went up by like an order of magnitude on its suggestion, from like 1 to 2 terabytes to 5 to 10 terabytes. Again, that's not really based on anything. Unfortunately, there wasn't that information in the DMP that said we're going to do X number of these types of data sets, and that's what you would need to base it on. And then security, I do like that it said the unknown status for personal and sensitive data suggests a cautious approach. And still, I think that should have been a little more apparent on that one. And then it suggested some additional information needed. I think the additional information would be things that we could use to actually help make the DMPs more robust, right? So that you can create the actual pipeline that we need. And so that's still a conversation that needs to happen between people. All right, so I'm gonna go on to the next slide. This slide I really like, so I do. It is, in my opinion, the best outcome that we had for the project, where we created this notification and tracking system for campus stakeholders. DMPs are not standalone objects. We've all been talking, or documents, we've been talking about that. That's the whole point of this. They provide a plan that are integrated with other parts of the campus. They're integrated with security, they're integrated with computational resources. If you're using that, they're integrated with, or they can be, let's put it that way. These are the possibilities. They can be integrated with your active storage, and then they can be integrated with the end point of actually where are you going to share the data out. And so what we did is we really focused on data security plans. Data security plans was a known challenge in terms of that they need to identify, actually, data security plans are a known challenge because the policy is that all projects that produce data are supposed to have a data security plan, but that sort of doesn't happen. Sorry, this is being recorded, but it doesn't, right? And so then the next best thing is, how do you identify and prioritize those? And I knew that having worked with, because I worked with our data security folks. I worked with the proposal developers, had really good relationships across all those divisions, which is reflected in our cross-divisional team. And so I already knew that they had this issue. And so I'm like, well, how can we create a solution for that is at the very least a notification? And talked like, when would you want to be notified? The Machine-Actionable DMP has a very simple element that really has a controlled vocabulary, right? Does it have secure information or not? If it does, then we can automatically notify them. And they said that they wanted to know before a DMP is ever submitted as part of a project, because the security requirements actually, they need to make sure that they also have the proper cyber infrastructure to go along with that. And that's something that some PIs, they miss. So we wanted to be able to hit that. But we also wanted to be able to track this information. And the DMP, a machine-actionable DMP tool machine-actionable DMP is not the place to actually track that information. And so that's why we went ahead and we decided to go offline. And it went from do we want to just have a notification to, hey, do we want to keep track of this? Do we want to keep track of the comments that we have in there? And so we integrated that in our app. Yeah, and it's definitely, I would say, the most beneficial outcome for the campus as a whole, such that I think I'll talk about it on the next steps. That they're continuing to develop it. Like it started as a proof of concept app, and now they're actually creating a research support app for all PIs that I should talk about here. Yeah. So, the project, it allowed, other takeaways that we had here is it allowed a broader understanding of what DMPs are across all of the divisions. Before the project, most people had a general understanding of the idea of a concept of what a DMP is, right? It's this ethereal thing. They didn't understand the specifics of how it could benefit researchers. And we had, we had a lot of conversations about reducing the burden on researchers and focused on the benefit. We wanted to make sure that instead of them being too general, that they actually have the detail in them. That would be the next steps that I think that they should take. And then what does that look like to actually have that granular level of detail in there so that we can take actions on it? A large challenge of all of that was the data security and who has access to the data and when. And that is one of the conversations that we had where it is it should be a detailed list. That actually is what the funders want. They want a detailed list of who has access to this information. It's their prompts that they have. When do they have access to it, and at what level? And it's usually generally like, the PI is in charge of that, right? But through this app, what we're able to do, because the PI has access to it, they're able to actually list who has access to it and when. And I know they want to integrate it eventually into the cyber infrastructure of the campus and like the computing resources. So then they'd actually be able to just assign people. They can assign their grad students specific roles. And so that's why we took that and where it's like, well, it can't be here because that's a vector of attack. And we have to think about security. So overall security. So we pulled it off and put it into the app. And the other thing that it really helped, a key to success, was the library being a neutral stakeholder and who also has a broad understanding of how all of the information in DMPs integrate with the larger campus research support services. When I was leaving UCR, I had some people tell me, I had a couple of them tell me that I was ubiquitous to data and DMPs on campus because I had integrated myself with all of these different places. It's like, what skills do I have, and how can I make sure that everybody on campus, or the key people on campus know that the library can do this. And they were worried about the project also, and how all of this is going to continue after I was gone. I'm glad I was able to stay on for this project and help them whenever they have questions on this, because there's not a data librarian yet there, but I keep on telling, they ask me, any good data librarian can actually fit into that role. I would say one of the keys, though, for something that is this complex, if you're hiring, I would suggest a mid-career data librarian who doesn't have to learn all of these things already, because there is a little bit of a ramp up there. But if you have a good mid-career data librarian, they'll be able to fit into that role. All of the connections have been made, and that also helped them understand that, they're not stuck in the lurch. There's just this gap that will be filled at some point, and in the meantime, I'm volunteering to help out with certain things so that it can still be connected. UCR's next step is creating the campus level research computing portal. It'll keep track of all of these things, who's authorized, et cetera, allow the PI to upgrade security and keep track of that. But I would say the other thing is the success of this project is that it would not have been successful if we had not been flexible in our approach and our end goals, because we had a lot of setbacks to the project. And what we did is we just kept on changing slightly to investigate and focus on a slightly different aspect of it, right? We knew that we didn't have to have we didn't have to have an answer that this is how you do it. We had to have an answer of, these are the things that we tried, and this is what we think we can do next. And so we did that throughout the project to be able to just finally go, oh, hey, we just need to do this app. That would work, and it works well for the campus. And then what we discovered is, for the things that, we can't do this right now, we just put it on a pile to revisit, because especially if we know it's a really good idea, like connecting it eventually to the camp of Koali, right? We'd love to connect it to Koali, but there's a lot of issues with that. And we're like, can't do it right now, but that would be a nice end goal. And so having that flexibility and open conversations and an open and growth mindset to be able to adapt really was successful. And that was it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kat. We have a few more minutes, so I'm going to go through some common themes and findings, and then we'll have hopefully a little bit of time for some questions. So in the fall of last year, our pilot team visited 5 of our core pilot partners and had in-person site visits and interviews, structured conversations. Honestly, it was really one of the most fun parts for me personally. We visited grant administrators, researchers, IT teams, library staff, people involved in the project. And we were interested in gaining insights into their experience, testing out these new workflows. So here's a few thoughts that we kind of garnered from that process, particularly around API development. This was really one of our technical goals in developing this pilot project. We wanted people to use the API so they could tell us, this doesn't work for me. I needed to do X, Y, and Z. I needed people actively using it for real projects that they thought of. So some of the high-level ideas that we came away with as far as things that we would need to update, first of all, expose the entire project lifecycle, so not just the submitted plan. I think it was ASU who mentioned this. So the idea being we would have information when a plan was created. Maybe it was published with the DMP ID. Maybe there were associated research outputs. So exposing that through the DMP. The importance of event-driven notifications. Many people told us that they wanted a system where our API would ping their API when something was created or some event happened. And then finally, more structured metadata, which just universally we all want. But that is something that we're working really hard on right now. Currently we are working with the Research Data Alliance. There is a working group of all the big DMP providers worldwide, and we are working on V2 of an API. And the idea is that we will have a unified cross-platform specification with standardized endpoints so that if a vendor is integrating with us or another system, they can do it across many, many different DMP tool providers. So across our pilot partners, we saw a few kind of standout goals that illustrate some of the key takeaways of the program. First off, growing cross-campus collaboration. A very common goal was using machine-actionable DMPs as a vehicle to improve and automate communication between library and campus units. And we heard several of those examples today. A very common one was between library and research IT for storage allocation, like Kat mentioned. The recognition of the library as a key hub. So many partners use this project to help cement the idea that the library is a key meeting point for data-related activities on campus, and to promote this idea and showcase the role of the library as a central resource for guidance on implementing data policy and best practices. And finally, as we heard today, balancing the use of AI and human expertise. We had several pilot partners who were experimenting with giving feedback on DMPs, generating DMPs, and both found that we did need some oversight into that process. Throughout this process, we saw how crucial communication among campus units was for making machine-actionable DMPs a reality. Libraries are really uniquely positioned to lead on research support, data management, really as shown by these new workflows and prototypes. So several of the prototypes really have the potential, some of them we heard about today, to streamline processes, ideally cut costs, look at scalability, and these are unified data workflows that can support the idea of a campus as a single source of truth, which was mentioned today a few times. So integrating these processes with existing services within the campus is not just for DMPs. Like Kat was mentioning, it includes security reviews, HPC resource allocation systems, proposal reviews. So it's much bigger than just the data management plan. And it can ensure that all the campus units have consistent information and can have a coordinated approach to supporting research. So by unifying data efforts through these plans, libraries can advance their role as the central hub for data stewardship and hopefully, ideally, drive more effective institution-wide research data management. So that is our final slide here. We are currently in the wrap-up phase of the project. We're going to be developing a series of, I think it's 4 webinars that are coming up. We're working on some final reports and materials. So if you're interested, there will be more materials about this project very shortly. And again, our project webpage, and I will open it up for any questions. The fun part.
Did we answer everything?
I guess we answered everything. Oh, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. Maybe you can talk about Berkeley and what you guys did.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely speak to that because we were one of the extended cohort. So my name's Aaron Foster, UC Berkeley. So my question, Kat, you raised this. I think, Jamie, you spoke to this. And one of the things we found when we looked at these plans is there's sort of an inherent lack of detail in the plans themselves, which is sort of, what we're trying to pursue or what we're trying to build is based on the contents of the plans. And if the plans aren't sufficient, then how do we go from there? So something we were thinking about at our campus is, what are the incentives potentially from like an administrator level? Doesn't have to just be from the library. I talked to the chief information officer at Berkeley about this. What are things that people see that we can incentivize people to add more detail to plans, or somehow connect what they put into plans to allocation of resources, storage, which is a big thing on our campus? Like, I'm curious what people think, if anyone has that come up.
I have thoughts on that. Is this on? Yeah? Okay. One thing that actually I forgot to mention, but was on one of my slides, is that many institutions that we talked with talked about the need for more oversight and governance at the institution level. So in my feeling is some of this, when it comes to DMPs, it needs to be compliance checks, making sure that researchers are giving the information that they need to, that DMPs reach a certain level of quality. I think that incentives are definitely a piece of that, but I also think that it's a responsibility of an institution to provide some kind of structure, guidance, oversight into that process, so we make sure that we have, otherwise there's little purpose in a DMP if it's not covering the basics to that level. So I don't know, maybe other people are more on the incentive side and have thoughts.
I can speak to this a little bit. I mean, I think it's a really important point, Erin, so thanks for raising it. I think there's a difference between compliance and accountability. I think that in some ways, the integration itself and the machine actionability of the plans could serve as its own incentive. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem in that, like you said, it's difficult to automate these workflows without having the content initially there that you need. But I think as we sort of move in concentric circles closer to a more fully automated and machine-assisted workflow with the people that we have in these offices, I think that the plans themselves and those integrations that have reciprocity and surface these plans in other areas of the institution could serve as its own incentive.
I think the only other thing I'd add to that, and I agree with everything that they had mentioned, is, and this would be a very direct benefit that our proposal developers mentioned, is that PIs have difficulty actually, which is just weird, identifying all of their outputs of the grant. And so to be able to collect that all in one place and to say that, well, here's this this tool that actually is going to go out. Yes, you uploaded it to whatever website as required by your reporting, and then you lost it or you forgot it or what have you. That's going to go in, the DMP tool is going to go and get that information there. And then we can create a report so that whenever 5 years down the road, whenever you have your main report, here's a list of everything from all of the different stakeholders that have it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Constance Malpas, OCLC Research. This is actually a kind of follow-on to that question. It was very helpful to hear the documentation from the various case studies about the value of recognizing DMPs and DSPs as rich documents of the research process, and the various institutional benefits of having a richer record, better structured metadata. I'm curious to know if any of the participants have been doing qualitative work with your faculty and researchers to understand what are the incentives that are most powerful to them to provide richer, more complete documentation. Clearly, there are ways to support better practices in the construction of a DMP, but it feels like we're still understanding that these richer documents will deliver administrative benefits to our institutions, provide a richer record of understanding the research enterprise, but we're still not really clarifying from an individual faculty or researcher point of view, what problem do they need this to solve to kick off a because as long as there's any expectation of that burden being on the PI or the research team, it feels to me that that's still someone in the dark. So specifically, the question is, are any of you are the extended cohorts doing work, qualitative work with your faculty and researchers to understand what's their perception of a highly motivating incentive?
We are not. But one of the things that you said there in terms of like, sometimes you work, I'm sure that half of you are librarians. Whenever you've worked with grad students or students and they don't know what question to ask. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be where they're at. They don't know how it can benefit them. Like when I first started with and so part of that is us being able to make that connection and make that pitch to them. When I first started as a liaison to proposal developers at UCR, they had monthly meetings and I showed up and I'm like, I'm here to help you. And they're like, yeah, how can you help us? And I'm like, okay, cool. Here are all the things. And then it was being in the room and listening and then identifying those things. So that would be my approach to it. Although your approach of actually having a qualitative, like identifying the people that can be champions and doing it, that would be a good way of doing it. But I haven't done that part.
Interesting.
I
Thanks.
just have opinions.
I know there are lots more questions. So I'll take that.
Thank you.
Martin Halbert, UNCG. Good to see you all. I first want to make a comment to celebrate the project. Speaking from the perspective of a former agency official that has spent countless hours reviewing DMPs, I can't help but think this is definitely going to improve the output and the inclusion of these things in grants. My question, I'm sorry I missed the first part of this. They've got too many good sessions going on right now. I know you're still writing up your reports and wrapping this all up, but have you thought about next steps and admittedly, since we've had so much discussion today already on the dismal funding landscape, just abstract it for a second, picture yourself in a more normal landscape. What kinds of work and next steps do you think would be useful as add-ons or next steps to this project?
I can speak at a high level if you guys want to talk at the institutional level as far as next steps. So at CDL, all of this work is tied to the DMP tool, so application for the creation of data management plans. And we are working really hard on a completely rebuilt DMP tool. So it will have much more structured metadata. We're working, as I mentioned, we're working on improving the API. So on our side, a lot of our work right now is focused on the technical components and making sure that we address some of the challenges the technical challenges, not the social, that were identified as part of this pilot project. So we're really taking the time to rebuild the application, focus on the metadata and making sure that it is as robust as possible, and looking for kind of phase 2 of integration so we can continue to demonstrate. Now that we've done that work, we have what we think is optimal metadata. We'll need to go back, do this process again, and look for more examples so that we can really continue to demonstrate it and continue to work on it. But does anyone have anything kind of at the institution level?
We at CU Boulder are going to continue to test and evaluate the DMP tool API. We are making updates to local guidance and creating templates that have been a result of this pilot that we're going to share and promote as exemplars at our institution. And we also, as I said in my presentation, have really formed strong relationships with some of the other groups on campus that we partnered with as part of this pilot. And we've been working, especially with our research innovation office, on thinking about more comprehensive integration between units, and have embarked on, collaborative projects like evaluating research information management systems elsewhere on campus together to ensure that data are exchangeable and we can think about metadata integration across systems. So I think that's a little bit of a nebulous answer at the end there, but I think that, we are making, strides towards a more automated and more integrated system on our campus.
UCR's next steps, it's creating that researcher portal and then incorporating machine-actionable DMP as appropriate. And also incorporating it with other systems, because I know they also are looking at large storage or large data set repositories and having something local. We're talking, terabyte and up size things. But because they all understand how it can work together, they're keeping that in mind of like, when, instead of forcing it in, is this a logical thing to have? My next steps at Fresno State, because I know that they have a problem with storage and research data in a lot of different campus storage systems, is to, and I mentioned it once to somebody at Tech Services. I said, I have a solution for what you just described, is to have that follow up with them and to have a conversation on how machine actionable DMPs would be able to provide a solution, and what can we learn from the rest of these projects and implement it. And this is an R2 institution, but we still have to worry about research data.
Just a quick follow on, and I don't want to put you on spot, Cynthia, but a interesting possibility would be integration of some of the machine actionable DMSP functionality with the tool that Bill Brennan has been working on for a long time on multi-submission for agency compliance. I know that's
Yeah.
You may see the connection that I'm thinking of. I'd be happy to pursue that with you later, but encourage you to think.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Help you go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention we're kind of out of time.
Okay.
And but happy to take questions afterwards. I don't want to keep anybody from lunch, though. So thank you all for joining us today, and we appreciate your participation. Thanks.